So, do we want to switch now to talking about Honduras and Xiomara Castro and the recent rallies that have been going on against the attacks from the far right that are trying to prevent the democratic election of a new attorney general and deputy attorney general. Um, I don't know if you want to pull that one up, and I've done a little bit of reading now with Nkrumah quotes, so maybe you
Yeah,
can read this one and then we react to it as you go.
for sure. Yeah, this is a short article from People's Dispatch, which everybody should follow. Put it in your bookmarks. They publish constant, um, good journalism about the places where there's political unrest, and constantly publishing about geopolitics from the perspective of the people. So it says Honduras mobilize in support of Xiomara Castro's government. The head of state called for the mobilization following an intensified destabilization campaign by the far right wing opposition. Thousands of people took to the streets in the Honduran capital of Teju, Tejus, Tegucigalpa,
Tegucigalpa. For some
Tegucigalpa,
reason, the C is pronounced with the TH. That's what.
Tegucigalpa. On the afternoon of Tuesday, August 29th, to express their support for the government of President Xiomara Castro. The head of state had called for the mobilization in response to the attempt by right-wing opposition deputies to impede the election of a new attorney general and deputy attorney general. Xiomara and others from the Liberty and Refoundation Party have warned that the moves by the National Party, which ruled for 12 years following the coup against Manuel Zelaya in 2009, and its allies from the Patriotic Alliance and Salvador Honduras parties, are a part of a broader campaign of destabilization with the objective to carry out a coup against her.
If anyone wants to know, by the way, a little bit more about that history of how they couped Zelaya in 2009, because he comes into power not really being like a anti-imperialist leftist. So he was fairly moderate center, almost like center right, and he has this radical shift in direction during his rule. He becomes objectively anti-imperialist and much more in favor of something like a democratic socialism or a social democracy, a radical third world social democracy. And he gets couped in 2009. And I believe the story goes somewhat like him getting kidnapped and taken on a helicopter to the middle of a jungle or something like that. I know this is something that we spoke with Ramiro I think the first interview we ever did with him. He covered it quite thoroughly, how it was that the coup of Manuel Zelaya went on, and it turned a country that was prosperous, on its way developing. The crime rates were getting lower, and the government that's instituted, the coup government, it's basically it instituted for the last decade a narco state. Crime has risen. It had for many years the highest crime rates in all of Central America. It's been a drug pen. Even U.S. officials have admitted of how leaders and key figures of this U.S. propped up government have been involved in the drug trade and with the cartels and all that stuff. So Xiomara, of course, wins. I believe it was last year now, or 2 years ago now. But she's been in power for a little bit over a year, I think. And she's the wife of Manuel Zelaya, and the movement that she's carrying forth is ideologically quite broad, but she sees herself as a form of democratic socialist, social democrat. I just wanted to provide that background, just so that.
That's good. When addressing the Sea of Red on Tuesday afternoon, Xiomara declared, "We must remain united, organized, and mobilized in resistance so that in Honduras there will be no more coup d'etat, narco dictators, nor pillaging." While the threats by the National Party against Xiomara's government have been constant since she was sworn in, the ending of the term of the country's current Attorney General, Oscar Chinchilla, and the government's decision to elect a new one, has sparked the latest wave of tension. National Party deputies allege that the decision by Libre Party deputies to elect a new attorney general to replace Chinchilla following the expiration of his mandate on August 31st is a violation and an attempt to impose a socialist dictatorship in Honduras. I was telling Carlos This is why I don't even, why even call yourself a democratic socialist? They're going to call you authoritarian anyways, right? You could take the most democratic route to power ever, like Xiomara Castro has in Honduras, and they're going to call you a dictator no matter what. Like, you could try and set up, just hire a new attorney general, and you can't even do that without getting called a dictator. But just shows how the playbook of the bourgeois media is played out at this point.
Right. I mean, everything she's doing is constitutional. So, like, her process of social transformation so far has occurred within the realms of this bourgeois state and these bourgeois institutions, and even that is not enough to satisfy them. And what you have to realize is that when it comes out of the mouths of the imperialists, words like dictator, democracy, they're meaningless. They're meaningless. What they mean is usually almost always the opposite of what it is that you think they mean when it comes out of their mouth. And again, why, if they're going to call you communist, Stalinist, whatever, why not just go all the way? That's one of the. But again, we're not within these processes. We don't know the limits that they're working with in the process of radically transforming their countries. So, struggles start at different points, and not every struggle can do what Cuba did, which is just immediately kick the imperialists out. And even that one, it wasn't immediate. It was in part. There was a back and forth for a year or so before it was able to fully nationalize industries and kick the multinational corporations fully out.
Absolutely. Which part am I on here? Chinchilla served as Attorney General since 2013, was a crucial ally to the coup-installed National Party government. So why wouldn't they want to get this guy out? Look at how hard the Democrats are persecuting Donald Trump just because they say he incited the January 6th riots. But when other people in other countries are literally involved with a foreign coup, they're not allowed to do anything about it. Like when they attacked Bolivia for prosecuting the murderous fascist Janine Áñez, who murdered trade unionists and activists in order to take power in a CIA-backed coup.
And Nicaragua.
Yeah.
For prosecuting people who are literal traitors and treasonous to the homeland, and who participated in, these CIA orchestrated color revolution attempts in, it was 2019, 2018. If you want to learn more about that, by the way, check out Dan Kovalek, our comrade Dan Kovalek's book on Nicaragua.
Hell yeah. For many Hondurans, the election of the new attorney general is an essential piece of rebuilding the country and freeing it from the grip of far-right forces. Pedro Mejia, a lawyer from the Studies for Dignity law firm, told Criterion HN that while serving as attorney general, Chinchilla used the office to persecute environmental defenders and social fighters, and on the other hand, guaranteeing impunity for political and business elites who benefited from environmental permits and corrupt environmental concessions. So where was the bourgeois media when all this was going on, right? When far-right coup forces were jailing activists and, allowing business owners to pillage the country. Where was the bourgeois media to call them a dictatorship then, to call them authoritarian then? No, it's only when they try and prosecute the murderers and the terrorists backed by the CIA that they're authoritarian. Mejia added that Chinchilla's role was to ensure through criminalization, on the one hand, that there was no opposition to the imposition of extractive mining, hydroelectric, and forestry projects in the territory. So again, it all centers around production, right? It's all about the economic exploitation. The politics is just and the U.S.'s foreign policy is just a way to ensure that their economic exploitation can continue.
It sounds a little bit similar to a story I think we might have just covered, and to a few quotes of theorizing on the system that produces results like this. And this is, again, the importance of theory, because it provides a sort of generalized, concrete awareness of how these systems operate. And then you're able to, on the basis of that, see how that takes particular forms, how that universal system takes particular forms in different cases. In the case of Cuba, in the case of Honduras, in the case of Gabon, whatever it might be. But you see the similarities there.
For sure. Carlos Zelaya, the secretary of the National Congress and a member of the Libre Party, said in a press conference, the National Party is afraid to elect a prosecutor who can set important precedents against corruption. He added that the country suffered from 12 years of corruption and impunity. Even the United States has accused the former National Party president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, of drug trafficking, while here he has gotten off scot-free. Amid the rising tensions and destabilization moves, a member of U.S. Congress, Maria Elvira Salazar, who leads anti-left and anti-Cuban legislation, wrote,
She was the one that did the call to condemn socialism that we covered earlier this year.
"Oh, she sounds like a real gem." This is like the world's biggest Karen, is how I picture her. Ziamora in Honduras looks more and more like her husband, Zelaya, who passionately embraced Castro Chavismo. That's my new ideology, Castro Chavismo. Midwestern Marks are Castro Chavismoists. I fucking love it. Just as Castro created the CDRs in Cuba.
That's the Committee for the Defense of the Revolution, by the way. For the people.
And Chavez, the colectivos in Venezuela. Now, Madam President organizes teams to silence and arrest opponents. Bad road. Honduras's National Congress began deliberations at the evening of August 9th to elect a new Attorney General, and Deputy Attorney General are set to finalize before August 31st. So this is what I always talk about with authoritarianism as a response to imperialism. Right, the CIA and the Western imperialist powers are trying to destabilize these countries, so they set up committees to defend the revolution, or colectivos, or teams, which are basically forms of protecting the revolution, protecting democracy, protecting the people. And from a Leninist perspective, when you have a socialist revolution, you have to smash the existing state and create a new state with new armed bodies of the state, with new people's militias. So an actually democratic form of the state. But when countries do this, they're accused of being authoritarian by the country who's trying to destabilize them, by the country who's trying to oust a democratically elected leader, because they have institutions that are set up to protect democracy and protect the will of the people. The bourgeois media responds by calling it authoritarian, but they wouldn't even need to do this if it wasn't for the regime change efforts of the West.
And if they're doing this now, and we can confirm that they're doing it now, just think, is this a new thing that bourgeois ideologues are doing, or has this been, a sort of general phenomenon to how the bourgeois ideologues react to whenever there is a government, a people, a country that wants to take a route that's outside of their dominated imperialist global capitalist system. So think, are the big scary stories about authoritarianism in the USSR correct? Let's explore, right? But let's not go into it with that bias, which is fed to us by people who, I don't know if they've ever uttered a true word in their goddamn life.